Okay, so in this video we're going to work again with the chord sequence from the last video, which was the 1-6-4-5 or the 1-6-2-5 chord sequence. And I'm just going to show you how to change the flavour of it a little bit. So to begin with, we're going to go a bit jazzy, and as we do that I'm going to explain to you how to construct seventh chords as well. So we're getting some theory in here too. So let's come back to our basic C major triad. And what we're going to do now on top of that triad is add another third. So remember, we had a pile up of thirds, 1, 2, and we're going to add another third. And that makes a C major seventh. And you'll notice that third on the top contains 4 semitones, so it's a major third. Now we can go up the whole C major scale adding sevenths like that. And you'll notice that on the minor, the D minor here, the third on the top is a minor third because it has 3 semitones again. We go up, same here. Now we come to our F major. That has a major third on the top. Remember, it was a major chord. Chord number 4 is a major chord. We come to chord 5, and you'd think by rights that this should also have a major third, making the 7th, but actually if you look carefully between the D and the F, we only have 3 semitones. If you were playing in the key of G, you know that you would put an F sharp in. But we're not in the key of G. We're in the key of C and we don't have an F sharp, so the F has to be natural. So that makes a different kind of 7th. So when we made the C 7th, that's called a C major 7th. And when that's written down, you would see that as C with a little maj, M-A-J, and then a 7 next to it. When we come to this chord number 5, we just call it G7, so it has a G with a little 7 next to it, G7. In classical music we call that the dominant 7th, and that's something I'll talk about at another stage, the dominant 7th. Okay, so then we come to our A minor chord, and again we've got a minor third making the 7th, and that's called A minor 7th. So that would be written with A, a little m, and a 7 next to it. And our last one, again we have a minor third on the top, and that makes a B diminished 7th, and that would be B dim 7. Okay, so let's come back to our chord sequence now. Let's just quickly refresh you. We've got chord 1, chord 6, chord 4, chord 5, or chord 1, chord 6, chord 2, chord 5. So again, put your chord down here in this slightly lower register, the C below middle C. Again, like we did before, take the third of the chord. The notes of a chord are called the root, the third and the 5th. So we take that one out. But what I want you to do now is get your right hand and put the third in with your thumb and put the 7th in, which is 3 above there. Now lift that up and take that up an octave, and you have a really beautiful jazzy 7th chord, a C major 7th, C major 7th. Let's do the same now on our chord 6, which is the A minor. Take your hand down, make a third above the root and a third above the 5th note, and again lift that up and out. Your C and G come up here. So we've got a lovely progression now. Now I'm going to go to chord 2 because I prefer that for this. So we go up to our chord 2, the D minor. Put your third in with your right hand thumb and put the 7th in with your little finger, so that will be C. And then again lift it up and out. So we've got, that's it. Now we come onto the G chord, we can't quite do the same. I mean, you might like the sound of this, but this, if we put the third in and then we put the seventh in and lift them up here, you'll hear that we've got a very discordant sound. That's called a diminished fifth or an augmented fourth. We'll come up to that later. So our best thing for when we do the G chord is to actually just put the seventh and the root of the chord, the G, next to one another like this. You could add in the third as well, that sounds quite nice. And that semitone leads you nicely back to the C chord. So let's go through that progression now. So you watch it, do it nice and slowly for you to see it. And then we do our different. It's such a smooth jazz sound. It's so laid back, it's lovely. I love it. So then of course, once you've got the hang of that, and just play around with it until you're really comfortable with it and you're not having to think about it. Because the point of all of this is that you're building a vocabulary that becomes so familiar that it's just inside you and just comes out when you improvise. When I'm improvising, I never think about what I'm doing like this, because it's all just inside me. I just let it come out. So that's the point of learning things like this, is to put them into your internal vocabulary, and then your hands will just do it. So go over it a few times and then begin to explore just playing around the notes, around the third and the seventh. Same thing using the chord 4. So you use those lovely seventh chords to just take off from, and as long as you keep arriving on those notes, on the notes of the chord, and keep arriving there, it'll work. You can play anything so long as you arrive on the notes that are of the chord. You can have something that we call suspensions, which is where you might be on a note below. So say for example you were on a note below the third of the chord, or a note below the seventh. You get a lovely clash, and then you can resolve it to the note. Resolve. And so on and so forth. Now you see, I did a lot of repetition there, but as soon as I hopped up into another register, it sounded really interesting. So let yourself roam around the piano. You can put your left hand down lower, and you can mix and match all the different things that we've talked about so far, and just explore. So there's one more thing I'd like to show you that we can do with this chord sequence before we leave it and move on to other things. And I've noticed that people love to explore and improvise in the style of Einaudi. Now, if you know Einaudi, well and good. If not, just go have a listen, because it's become very popular in my lessons. Lots and lots of people love to play Einaudi and want to improvise Einaudi style. Now, this chord sequence doesn't quite lend itself to Einaudi. It's a bit kind of poppy for him. But what we'll do, and I'll show you, something he does a lot, is we'll take the fifth of the chord, so we haven't got the third in now, and we're just going to go up to the note, the root note of the chord, but an octave higher, and we can make a little pattern. So all I'm doing up here is going. Just use the whole of the piano and just let yourself drift around and float about, and just keep arriving on notes of the chord and just enjoy it, because this is a lovely way of improvising. Can just indulge in that. I love improvising like that. And in future videos I'll show you chord sequences that lend themselves much more to that, and much more interesting left hand patterns as well. As you grow confident with the chords, you can roam around the piano with your left hand too, and you'll see that it's much more fun than just plonking down triads. And many people get stuck in that, plonking triads, and feel that it's enough, but it's not as satisfying as other things that I've got in store for you.